to more of our BCAT 2020 government town election coverage. We are back with another candidate forum. With me today is Planning Board member Bill Gaffney, who was elected to his first term in 2015 after being appointed earlier during when a vacancy opened up. And this came after him being on the Zoning Board of Appeals for 15 years. So, welcome, Bill. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Rich.
So you've done one full term and a little extra. So what made you actually first want to get involved with the planning board to begin with?
Well, I think the Board of Appeals, spending 15 years in the Board of Appeals kind of was a natural progression. If you see, I would say a great majority of the planning board members today are ex-Board of Appeals members. So the Board of Appeals, you get the experience kind of on the tactical day-to-day workings on zoning and things like that, versus the planning board, you're more strategic level. So it's kind of a natural progression.
Makes sense. But I guess what kind of piqued your interest to get involved, I guess, in public service in this way at all?
It's a great question. So I grew up in town. I went away for a couple of years after I graduated college, and I came back probably 10 years later. But it was just, as most people, as they get involved, something, initiated them to get involved. And for me, it was a Board of Appeals issue that I had that my neighbor had gone through.
Oh.
So I
close to home.
I blame my neighbor. Or I thank my neighbor for getting me involved in something like that. So I got involved in the Board of Appeals at that time and kicked it off, and found that it was really interesting getting involved in the town at that level.
Okay, excellent. And so you've done one term. Mm-hmm. What makes you want to go for another 5 years?
Well, going for another 5 years, I was on the fence doing it because I still work a day job, and it does take time out of kind of your regular life, a couple nights a week. But the planning board meetings do sometimes tend to go a little late in the evening.
A little bit.
And then I've got my early morning Fridays to deal with on my day job. So, I was a little in between. So I polled my my board members and asked if they thought I should go, if I was adding any value. People do come up to me if they recognize me from BCAT. Sure. And they gave me their feedback, and I think the people, I appreciate that feedback, because people would stop me in the grocery store and say, I appreciate what you're doing. So that helped me kind of make that decision to go for another 5 terms. If people felt that way strong enough to introduce themselves and talk about things in town and how they appreciate it. And people do watch. I can tell you, because they come up and they'll say specific things about a specific show, and it would have been the night before. So there's a true interest in town on that, and I think they appreciate the people that do spend the time on the boards. I think, again, if I do add value, if I do ask some interesting questions that might have the other board members thinking a little bit, and have the applicants thinking a little bit differently, based on my experience with my day job, that maybe other folks don't have that benefit, then I can still help out a little bit and add some value to the board.
Yeah, and that was actually you led me perfectly to my next question, which is talk a little bit about your background, education,
Sure.
Work experience, and how you think that helps you, do your work for the town.
Yeah, so my education, Burlington High School. I'm not going to tell you what year I graduated, but so then after that I was up at Lowell, and I graduated with a BSEE degree, electrical engineering. So I've been in electronics and high tech for the last number of years. And my role that I have today is I'm a quality manager, a customer quality manager for the Americas for a high tech company. That allows me to go around the country, and I get to see all the high tech areas around the country, and actually around the world. I do get an opportunity to go around the world as well to high tech areas. And then based on that, I can benchmark of what other people are doing versus what Burlington's doing with regard to possibly traffic, building design. If you look at things like parking garages, how they deal with that, solar, how are they dealing with that? Are they keeping it out in the open? How are they maybe buffering that a bit? So if you look at certain things like how they're managing sidewalks and crosswalks and landscaping and things like that. It really gives me a benefit to say, well, if I go to North First Street or if I go to the 101 in San Jose in Silicon Valley, you see, the Yahoos and the Googles and Amazons and all those guys, and how they look and how we would do that here. It's a little different from California to here, just from green spaces and things like that, because it's nice weather all the time.
Sure.
But you can kind of key off of that, and when people are kind of thinking a little differently, I say, well, you might want to do different things. Or I've never really seen that if people are saying that we should do that because it's a high-tech type of thing. I haven't seen that ever, in, let's say in California or any place else. And maybe one example of that might be when if you go into the next town over, you see the buildings all lit up with different colors, right? Would they do that? In kind of, I would say, the first-class towns that you go to in the high-tech areas, they don't do that.
Yeah.
They keep it very subtle and muted. And so when you go in from that town to another town, you can tell you've entered that because you don't have that color showmanship coming at you. It's more of a first class area, and it's subtle because you don't have to work hard to make yourself known because you're already there. And let's say, in Santa Clara or San Jose or Cupertino, things like that. So it seems. But if you're trying to catch up with that town, you may need the bright lights in the big city type of thing to try to attract, where I don't think Burlington needs that at this point.
No, having watched a good number of planning board meetings, it's something that you kind of are pretty consistent about. I've noticed.
Yeah,
is like think, lighting and lighting colors.
Yeah, and I think you see that as you march down 95, from one town to the other, and you kind of see that and the difference. And as I travel around, as you go down the highways from one town, you can see where they would have the difference in bylaws, and you kind of go, oh, that's nice, and then you kind of go to the next town, you can see where that happens, and you go, yeah, maybe not so much, and that town's trying a little harder, which is fine because they're competing against each other for business, right?
So, over the last 5 years, what are some of the projects that kind of stick out to you as like, not just, a big project that happened, but something where you're like, yeah, it was, we as the planning board, added value, made this, better from what the initial proposal was. What do you think was a good, like, sort of win-win success for both, the applicant and the town?
Let me think about that a second. I know as we always look back after the fact, we could say, oh, if we could have done that a little bit better.
Sure.
I think there actually all of them are kind of win-wins because you get down to what the applicant's looking for versus what would be benefit to the town. I know currently there's a large walk-in medical area that's being built in the center of town. We spent a lot of time on that. They actually came before us and walked away from the table because of the requirements that we put on with the town center requirements. So their signage is big, but it's within the bylaw. We don't have any choice of that. But the design elements of that, as they came in initially, were completely different than what our scope was in the town center. So we changed that quite a bit. I think that was a big project that we spent a lot of time in, and to get it right from a building standpoint.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And, I know sometimes the planning board will negotiate with a business or a developer saying like, okay, you want to do this big project, we want, something X, Y, or Z for the town. What are some of those that kind of you think have been recent that, are maybe still even in the works that, you think are good?
Yeah, I think a couple of those examples would be like on the Terrace Hall Ave, there's industrial building there that if you look at that, we asked for sidewalks to be put in there now. So instead of it being there, because there's a space between where you can walk, we'll take that money and put it somewhere else in town for a sidewalk that's needed.
Okay.
I think also with the Burlington Mall renovation with the, I think they call it the Village, where the old Sears Auto Parts used to be. That again, that will all have sidewalks across there as part of that new development. So it's going to be much safer for pedestrians going along Mall Road to have that sidewalk there, to have a new a bus stop there. That's all part of that development that was added in, separate as a part of the redevelopment of that.
Excellent. So, as we said at the top, you're running unopposed for the seat, so it looks pretty certain that you'll have another term. What are some of the things that you would like to see get done, When I ran the first time,
what my main objective is traffic, and I think everybody recognizes that. So when I see projects come before me, I look very, very closely at the traffic studies, and then I put a spin on it of a local traffic, meaning I grew up here. I travel the roads, twice a day, and I know what traffic is, when, and what time of day. Where the people that are taking the traffic studies will be there, for a certain period of time on one day, and then just leave. So there are local nuances to that, which I try to put into play, and I tend to be more of that these things need to be in place and in the plan versus it being promised for later to help traffic out. One example is Northeastern, where there's talk about, well, to help the traffic out there, we're going to help that South Bedford Street 3A intersection. It's actually in Woburn, but it backs up all the way, if you go South Bedford Street, all the way back to Wayside Road at 5 o'clock at night.
Oh, so, I used to drive it every day.
Right, so the condition of that was the traffic, but I think what we have to do is make that more concrete in the plans versus it being a promise, and we'll plan to do it later. And I think those tend to maybe fall off the radar of sometimes, and they just don't get done, or it's not a priority, versus other things. I think another thing that I'd like to focus on is actual landscaping, when they have the opportunity for landscaping as well. With the applicants and the plans, the landscaping plans don't get into a lot of detail, and we can approve but just by the way it looks, but it's kind of following up after the fact. Did they actually follow through with what the board recommended? And as I go around town to the projects that we've approved, there's a lot of things there that were in the plans that just didn't get done, and there's just because of resources, but there's no follow-up to say, yeah, was that specifically done? And maybe we can be more specific on landscaping plans by, maybe plant type and how many and where they're going to be located versus saying, yeah, that kind of looks okay, and follow up with the planning department afterwards, and maybe they do, and maybe they don't, because, it's just a matter of time for everybody to get everyone done, and if it falls off, then everybody just kind of goes on with their lives. So maybe kind of tighten that up a bit over time.
It's a little bit more follow through on making sure the plans are adhered to as they're agreed to.
Yeah, that would be something I'd be more focused on and be more specific. So then you can, when you look at the decision, it's very clear. Instead of it having an option, it would be, yes, specifically this is what it's got to be. Sometimes the applicant should do this and should do that versus, they may be able to do that. So instead of kind of loosening it up a bit, I'd like to tighten that up so we know what we gave them, we know what we said, and it's written down that way in the decision.
Excellent. Now, I know one of the things that the planning department has been working very hard on is Biotech. What are your thoughts on how the planning board can and should, work with, proposals that come in that regard? And do you, I guess, first of all, agree that this is, a good direction for the town to be going in?
Yeah, I think anything to diverse the town with regard to that. So if you think of just business in general, you don't want to have the eggs all in one basket. So you don't want to be purely a biotech. You don't want to be purely a restaurant town or purely a hotel, because you can kind of label yourself in there and then you're stuck. So I think the diversity of businesses, diversity of commercial, diversity of entertainment and hotels, and living spaces, I think all of that needs to be included. And I don't think you write anything off because of that. You need to kind of have all of those different areas. So when you get into some economic downturns, perhaps, then you've got an even slate versus having all your eggs in one basket. So yeah, I'm in favor, absolutely in favor of that. Yeah.
All right, very good. So I think it's about the time we have, except that even though you are running unopposed, I would like to give you an opportunity to have a camera and just sort of make a pitch to our residents and viewers tonight about why they should be, one, happy you're going to be in again, but two, to come out and cast a vote for you anyway.
I think, yeah. So whether you agree or disagree with how I perform on the board, and hopefully you agree. I'll ask the tough questions, and I'll keep on asking the questions till I get the right answer. I work on the data from what I get in front of me from the applicants, and if I don't have it or it's not clear, you'll see me asking more and more questions, which maybe it's based on my experience and my education and my day job. That's what I do naturally, so it may be a little different from most folks that are on the board, but either way, I think I'm a big fan of coming out and voting anyway. It's you know it's the folks' right to do that, and I'm a big fan of just folks coming out and you know ticking off any name that they like, and I love to see people out on voting day.
As do we. And to that end, voting day is Saturday, April 4th. Polls are here at the high school, down in the gym, and the polls will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So make sure you get out there and cast your ballots.
Thank you, Rich.
And I want to thank you for coming in. I appreciate it, and thanks for your service to the community and willing to put up with those long meetings for another 5 years.
Happy to. Thank you, Rich.
Appreciate it.